Obviously spring allegedly is arriving. Oh, actually, it's quite sunny. Spring is arriving. Spring is arriving, and of course, for many millions of people who suffer from hay fever, they don't like this very much because, of course, hay fever can be very annoying, but the symptoms actually can be devastating for people. And really, hay fever is an allergic response to pollen, and that pollen can come from lots of things actually, not just from flowers, but from grass, also from trees and weeds. And I'm delighted to say joining us now is Max Wiseberg, who is airborne allergens expert and creator of Hey Max. Good morning to you.
Good morning, David. How are you?
Yeah, very well indeed. Thank you very much. Right, let's talk about hay fever. It's incredibly common. Symptoms are very varied. Do you just want to outline to people what those symptoms are and how common it is?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, it's getting worse. There are more people getting hay fever. So about 20 years ago, when I first started my business, there were about 1 in 5 people who got hay fever, and it's now up to about 1 in 2. About 50% of the population are getting hay fever. So it's massive. It's really grown a lot. What is it? As you say, it's a reaction to pollen. The body thinks pollen is something it's got to deal with, and it hasn't. It's actually harmless, but the body makes a mistake, and so it reacts to it. And the way it reacts to it is it produces stacks of histamines. Now, histamines in your body are absolutely fine. We need them. They keep us alert and attentive and awake in our brains. But if you got too many of them, they're the bad boys of hay fever. They cause the runny nose or the stuffed nose, the itchy eyes, itchy ears, itchy roof of the mouth. Some people come out in hives even, itchy throats, all sorts of things. For some people, it triggers asthma and they can end up in hospital. It's all sorts of horrible things. So it's really unpleasant and really uncomfortable. And if you suffer badly from hay fever, people just really don't understand how difficult it is to live with it. It's really unpleasant.
I mean, you're right, and I remember doing this years ago on Newsround, about 25 years ago, but the fact is I had kids at that time. It was so bad they couldn't go outside, they had to wear glasses because the pollen was getting in their eyes, and they turned, and as you rightly say, you mentioned histamine there, and of course the histamine release was just off the scale for some of these people.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's horrible. I remember going on a canal holiday, and I spent half the holiday below decks with toilet paper, wet toilet paper on my eyes because they were blown up so badly. It's crazy. People have a terrible time with hay fever, and people aren't very sympathetic about it either. But
no, I don't think they are. So just for people, I mean, obviously you have a sort of continuum of severity. So you've got minimal symptoms up to severe symptoms. How severe can it become?
Well, as I say, people can be hospitalised by it. So people have been in hospital because of hay fever. But in Melbourne, in Australia, a couple of years ago, there's a thing called storm hay fever. So in a storm, the lightning, there's a whole bunch of reactions which split the pollen grains so they become more. So immediately a high pollen count becomes a double high pollen count, and each of those pollen grains becomes more allergenic. So it's a kind of serious thing. And in Melbourne, 3 or 4 people died because their hay fever triggered their asthma, and they died before they got to hospital.
Golly. Now, I mentioned that it is an allergic response to pollen, and that pollen can be different pollen, and that means that the season is quite long, isn't it? Because you have different pollens at different times.
So we've just come out of tree pollen. Tree pollen goes from February to around now. And it's just eased off the tree pollen. About 25% of the population are allergic to tree pollen. And we're now going into grass pollen. And grass pollen rises from now. We're starting to get high pollen counts, which are all grass. And in June, it'll be a nightmare, and possibly in July. The last couple of years, July's not been too bad, but usually July's quite tough. And then at the end of July, we go into weed pollen, and much fewer people are bothered by weed pollen.
So the grass pollen, can I just ask you about that grass pollen? Because it's not really the cut grass, is it? It's wild grass. Is that right?
It's both. It's all grasses. It's all grasses. So different people react to different grasses. You can have an allergy test to see exactly what they are. But no, the grass in your garden and your lawn will get you as much as the wild grass.
Well, around me, everyone's got their lawnmowers out
I was
now.
gonna say.
I mean, it's like incessant at the moment. Everyone's cutting their grass. So we've basically discussed the fact that it's incredibly symptomatic, that there are different types of pollens. It's an allergic response. Max, if you could just hold there for a minute. I have to go to a break, but after the break, we'll talk about what you do about it, how you test for it, what you can do about it, and how you can put people out of their misery. Max, thank you very much indeed for the minute. Don't go anywhere. This is Talk.